Hello, everybody, and welcome to Frankenstein's podcast, where it's all about the monster. We are a creature feature podcast about monsters and why we love them. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Praska, and with me is
your other host, Khalid Hussein.
What's going on, Khalid?
Oh, just hanging out. Monday fun day, as they say.
Monday fun day, yeah.
What's going on with you?
Oh, yeah, Monday fun day. I've been sick all day, so it's not as much of a Monday fun day, but I'm feeling good right now.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, you're probably like, "Ooh, I'm about to talk to Khalid." So I feel my body is just like naturally getting those immune what is it? All right, you know what? I'm gonna abandon the joke right now because I don't know enough medical terminology, but glad to hear you're feeling better.
Yeah, I was pretty excited to talk to you, but I'm a little more excited to talk to our guest today.
See, I should have guessed. We do have a guest, and that's a good reason to be excited.
Yeah, I'll bring her in right now. It's Nyla Innuksuk, who's a director, writer, producer, and creator in the realm of VR and mixed media, too. She co-created the Inuk superhero Snowguard from Marvel Comics, and a recent film, Slashback, which we'll be digging into, is currently available to buy or stream on Hulu, which is where I watched it. Welcome, Nyla.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you guys. Even though you're sick, I'm happy you're able to muster up the energy for the chat.
It was something I was looking forward to today, for sure.
Great.
How are you doing?
You're a trooper, Joe.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm well, thanks. It's kind of, I'm not sure where you guys are calling or chatting from, but I'm in Toronto, so it's just after 8 o'clock here, which is almost my bedtime.
I get that. I'm in Minnesota. Khalid's in LA, so we're kind of all over. We're in 3 different time zones.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but I feel I'm feeling tired too.
Minnesota. Where in Minnesota?
In St. Paul, actually, capital city.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Big Mighty Ducks fan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fun. Mighty Ducks. Yes.
So that's about my. I've got a weird amount of knowledge about Mighty Ducks related. I have a Mighty Ducks related understanding of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah, well, they do feature a lot of like legit
all
places.
You need. That's really all you need.
Yeah. That's really all you need. Yeah. One thing about Minnesotans though is like we're always super proud of like any like pop culture thing that happens here. So like mentioned Mighty Ducks, you mentioned Prince, like we're just like automatically excited about it.
Yeah. I mean, does that mall, that Sky Mall exist?
Like the Skyways within the cities?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's big.
Where they go rollerblading?
Yeah.
I will say, as Minnesota natives, that is the one part of this that's either incredibly unbelievable or incredibly like, okay, it explains why they made it to the Olympics in the next movie. Because with the magic of editing, they have them like rollerblading through downtown Minneapolis, and then they end up at the Mall of America, which like, if you're not from Minneapolis, it's like, oh yeah, all of these landmarks are probably right next to each other. The Mall of America is like by the airport. It's like
it's a different town. Yeah, different town altogether. Like you'd have to take a freeway.
Yeah.
The implication that these like 11-year-old children rollerbladed to it from downtown Minneapolis is like it's incredibly upsetting unless like you're saying they're the best athletes ever.
They are the best.
Well, they are the best. They not only do they win their division, the entire team gets chosen to be Team USA.
Yeah, right? They all made the cut. That's so amazing.
It's deserved. After they skate to Mall America, well deserved.
Yeah, that's their
and actually for
the Mall of America.
For a long time, my understanding of Los Angeles came from Mighty Ducks too.
Wow.
Yes. Where they invented the knuckle puck.
Yeah, of course.
Mighty Ducks,
I
great
love
unifier.
I love that I got to talk this much about Mighty Ducks today. I wasn't in my calendar.
Yeah, it's a nice surprise. I know.
Yeah, it's always nice.
Nyla, I've got a couple of new guest questions for you that we asked all the new people to the podcast. Are you ready?
So ready.
Okay, so first one, since we're creature feature podcasts, monsters and whatnot, in any corner of pop culture that could be like books, movies, shows, what have you, what's your favorite like monster or creature? And if it's not the same, what would you consider to be like the scariest for you?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that probably they'd be a bit different for me. Growing up, I really loved um, the the monster sharks in Jaws was
Mm-hmm.
just something that I just thought was so fun. And I mean, just this idea of I grew up in kind of a small coastal town. This one was very different, but this idea that this kind of normal life could be broken up um, by this threat invading the town, I think was something that was big for me. I think though that you know even um, as I've gotten older, some of these movies that I love, these scary movies that I loved when I was younger, um, I I think that Norman Bates would have to be the scariest for me.
Interesting choice.
Just
Yeah.
uh, I think that um, just in different ways for me, these um, men with controlling mothers have had an interesting way of kind of infiltrating my life in a way that I was, and growing up, I loved Norman Bates. I had a huge crush on him when I was a teenager. And I think that is what makes him so dangerous is that he's got this charm and a vulnerability that kind of uh, brings you in, but then, reveals himself to be this monster.
Yeah. Wow, good answer. That's a unique one. We never had that one before.
Yeah, a lot of firsts wrapped up in that answer.
I like it. So next question, what do you consider yourself most geeky about? Like we're all kind of geeks about something we could just like talk about for hours. What's on your geek card?
Yeah, I'm really into mixed reality stuff. That's kind of a space that I've always just kind of loved exploring is interactive experiences, virtual reality, augmented reality, location-based sound, um, and so kind of exploring different ways of telling a story through different platforms, whether it's video games or kind of interactive comic books or something. I love just kind of um, what I think is so cool about geek culture is that there are these universes that you can kind of um, that can be expanded on and explored in so many ways. And for me, sometimes when you're creating a world or characters or a universe, it's fun to think of, with like Slashback, my first movie is teenage girls fighting aliens. For a long time after I made the movie, I just needed a break from it. But after years of having made it, it's like, oh, I could imagine a Slashback video game or something like that. And being able to explore a world or a universe in a different way is something that's just, I think, really fun.
Cool.
Since you mentioned VR, like, can you tell us a little bit about like how you got into it, what your experience with like specifically like making a profession out of it is? Because that's just such a cool. I mean, not that everything else that you do isn't cool, but that's like something new that we haven't really had anybody explore on the pod before, and I'm just so fascinated by that. So, like, what is a career in VR like?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's changed a lot throughout my exploration of the medium. When I really got into it, it was this thing, and it actually still kind of is something that not a lot of people can access. So you're making something for, uh, oftentimes it's a headset, and even the most accessible headset, the Oculus Go, maybe as 300,000 that are out there or something, you know, so it's the and when I was first exploring virtual reality and making stuff and building things in Unity and building these games or else these other kinds of experiences within these headsets, we were working with the DK2, which was the Oculus Developers Kit. So there were no consumer headsets out. So we were making things that only other people that were making things could watch, and basically nobody else. And it was, but actually, that's kind of what I loved about it, is that it was really just about experimentation, and everything that you were doing was kind of for the first time, and you were exploring just kind of breaking things apart and seeing what would work. And sometimes the coolest things would come from the mistakes, and that kind of phase of experimentation is one that I still kind of love to surround myself with. And this one project, actually, it's that I'm really kind of into right now, is this one that involves underwater archaeology and these ships that went missing almost 200 years ago, and they're known as the Franklin expedition. The two ships were called, one was the Terror and one was the Erebus, and the ships went missing, and there was this huge mystery about what happened to the sailors, and there was evidence of cannibalism, and they had left a note that was found, but the ships themselves were never found, and until very recently. And so I'm working on a documentary to kind of explore these ships and their discovery and what it means to the communities close by. But in that process, we're working with these amazing they're just like the coolest people. They're these archaeologists that are also underwater scuba divers. And then when I went to visit them, they were getting ballistics training, because where they're exploring is in the high Arctic. So they have to be prepared to shoot polar bears if needed. And so they're just like these very fit archaeologists that are kind of that do this underwater scuba diving and bringing up these artifacts, and then in the meantime we've got these amazing photogrammetry, just thousands of photographs to create these 3D models of replications of these ships that we can essentially do whatever we want with, and there's so much with that much data. And just kind of getting to explore there's the documentary, but then, you know, there's so much that can kind of that can't be told within 90 minutes, and you kind of want to explore in other ways. And so that's where I think these kinds of things like virtual reality, augmented reality can actually be really great extensions of a project. And then there is this built-in audience, and then oftentimes there can be a physical location where these things can exist, these installations, or they can be traveling installations. And I feel like that's really important for these experiences, because it's hard to rely on just them being sold, these things being sold on an Oculus store or something like that. You kind of want to also to have this physical installation where people can kind of be coming through and or else be watching it, being on their phone or online, or something that's a little more accessible.
That is
I
so
love that.
cool.
I've never really considered the idea of like it's supplementing like media, like a film or something, and adding to it. That's a great way to look at it, and a really cool expansion that isn't necessarily like obvious either.
Yeah, it is hard to it's that's how I kind of it am that's where it kind of makes, I feel like, the most sense now. There is room for these standalone experiences or games as well, but they just have to really make sense. I think some of the best virtual reality experiences that I've taken part of are more like team games where you're kind of going through what is, you've got a headset on, so everything you're seeing is the virtual environment, but there's also a physical environment you're kind of that is matching the virtual one as well, so that you're interacting with.
That's, yeah, fascinating. I wanted to ask you a little bit too about your co-creating Snowguard, the Marvel character. That was
Yeah.
I didn't, having watched Slashback, I didn't actually piece together until like looking into a little more that you were same person there, because I remember when that came out. I think was it 2018 when Snowguard came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that being like a really cool like new character to follow in comics. What was it like? Like how cool is it to just like create your own or co-create your own Marvel superhero?
It was really, really cool. It was fun. And it was one of these things where, if you are a nerd and you're hanging out with the kind of the indie gaming scene and the indie comic scene in Toronto is there's lots of intermingling. And so I had a friend who had written a comic book series and was very much involved in that comic book world. And she knew Jim Zub, who is this great comic book writer, and he lives in the same city as I do, and so she thought that we would get along, and so we met up for coffee one day, and we were talking through the ideas of a superhero and maybe an Inuk superhero, and I was at that time just kind of exploring some ideas of shamanism for a virtual reality project, actually. And then we kind of just were talking through the idea of this character. And the cool thing about Jim is that and the cool thing about comic books is that it is such a smaller, it's such a different thing than making movies. It is a much smaller team, and the turnaround is so fast. You talk about it and all of a sudden it's out there and on shelves in stores. And so getting approval to create a new character, Jim just talked to his editor in New York and said, hey, I would love to create a new character for this team. And they were like, yeah, sure. And so then what we did is they just obviously said we had to kind of create a bit of a pitch. And so we developed this character and what kind of her superpowers would be, which is just so much fun to kind of think about. And then her, what she looked like, I used a lot of references from my sister-in-law, because Snowguard herself, she's from the community of Pang, which is where I shot Slashback, but also where my nephews are from. And so I thought that it would be really cool for them to have a superhero that was from their hometown and looked like their mom. And so then but then at a certain point we changed artists when we were working with with Sean in South Africa for the first round of comics, and then we switched over to Tom, a different artist in Toronto. And at that point, we were able, just for the annual issue, which is a kind of a larger issue, and that was Snowguard's origin story, essentially. And with that, we were able to meet up in a coffee shop and talk through it all in person. And out of that, Snowguard started to I noticed she looked a little more like me in that version. But what I think is so cool about nerd culture is now she's this character that exists in the world, and other people are expanding on her and what she's up to. And I think that's such a cool thing too. And for me, I didn't necessarily Snow Guard's a member of the Champions League, which is a teenage superhero league, and each of these teenage superheroes have their own backstories and histories, and that's not something that I necessarily know everything about. And then I've got people coming up to me and asking questions about Snow Guard and her relationship with Vision and all of these things. And I just love hearing about everybody's thoughts and theories. And then also I have one of the teachers in the school in Pang reached out to me, and there were some students that had written some letters, and one of them was, asking if I thought that Snow Guard knew how to ride a snowmobile, and just, really kind of sweet questions. And that is honestly my favorite part.
I love that.
That's so cool. That's amazing. Yeah, to be able to create like a character that so many people from your community can just like really identify with and imagine all that for. That's a really cool story.
Yeah. And I kind of, at first, it just seemed like a lot of fun. And then at one point when it came to, I was writing a story, and then I realized, like, oh man, that this is actually something that people are going to read. It actually has to be kind of cool. But yeah, it's nice to have, obviously, Marvel means something to people just like beyond Snow Guard.
No, I mean that's just such an amazing sandbox to create a character for, and like a universe that like at this point is like just embedded in the culture in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
So like to be able to bring something like that from the real world into it and make it like that much more real and in that way is so awesome. I wanted to pivot. So some of your background prior to Slashback is in documentary and short filmmaking, which you know, focused on Indigenous and specifically Inuit stories. So would you be willing to share a bit about your work and like in that realm and what led you to working in a genre space, with like Marvel and Slashback? Like it just seems like a, a deliberate pivot. And so it's like I'm fascinated like what made you start in like a nonfiction space and then go to like a genre space.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a deliberate pivot. And one really that just came out of necessity. Uh, I got really sick, and it was the kind of sick where it just it I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, I actually was told by my doctor that I had a 50-50 chance of surviving the month. And
Wow.
so it was, at that point I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I was, I would say, almost overly ambitious. And I was so worried all the time. And then I realized when I got that news, I was like, whoa, like, all that stuff that I am so worried about all the time, like, it doesn't mean anything. It was this kind of big, um, uh, just kind of weight off my shoulders, kind of. I know it sounds crazy, but I was really, really grateful. And I still am so grateful for that experience. And obviously, I got better, I got healthy, I had to get surgery, but it was this time where I was able to. One of the weirdest things was in that time I just was so mad at myself that I hadn't made a movie yet. That all I wanted to do was, growing up, was make stupid movies, and I was like so, um just caught up in kind of other things, and I was working at a company where I felt like I was being taken advantage of, and I felt like I was being tokenized for my indigeneity in so many ways within my professional work. So I quit my job, and I just decided that if I got better, that I was gonna, because I'm really passionate about work. I love working, and if I was, gonna work as hard as I do, that it had to be on things that I was really passionate and excited about. and that I wanted to focus on my own things and developing my own things. So that meant I was actually at the time pitching Slashback with the idea that I would be writing and producing, but that someone else would be directing. And so I told my producer at the time, like, I'm actually going to direct this. And he was like, okay. But I had just survived this near death thing. So what was he going to say? And and the script was great. And so it was, whether or not I should have been making a movie at that time, you know, it is what it is. But I felt like I was learning a million lessons a day. And now when I'm kind of working towards my next feature, which I'm hoping to shoot in the fall, it's just like, how can I be taking those lessons and just trying to get better and still, and kind of, you know, trying to find it, still being focusing on stories that I find really exciting and are, you know, in this case, this next one is a little bit more of an adult horror, I would say.
Ooh, exciting.
Mm-hmm. Very intrigued.
Thank
you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us too. Glad to hear that you made it out of that okay and
yes,
are doing
better.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for sharing this. It's a interesting journey. I suppose we could start digging into Slashback specifically. Khalid, did you want to give the listeners a little synopsis before you move into it?
Yeah, let's get into the synopsis from our homeboy Google. Today we are discussing the 2022 feature film Slashback, directed by Nyla Innuksuk. Sorry, I always do that. This is the first time I've gotten to do it with the director here. And so we've got a synopsis from our homeboy Google that goes a little something like this. Micah and her ragtag group of friends discover an alien invasion in their tiny Arctic hamlet, and it's up to them to fight back using makeshift weapons and horror movie knowledge. And that's it.
What a monster.
They're creatures of the abstract that live off potential energy.
It's alive!
And I have a question immediately, since this is the first time I'm doing the homeboy Google synopsis for the director. How do you feel about that synopsis?
I honestly, I'm like, I wonder where they got that from. Like, I wonder, it almost sounds like something that was from an original pitch deck before the script was written or something.
Yeah. That's interesting. I have a
I've sometimes okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have a sneaking suspicion that like 2023 and later movies are usually AI generated synopsis.
That's what it sounds like. Yeah, we're thinking that too.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like that would make sense.
Yeah, when we read some of the synopses from like older movies, they're like a paragraph. Like whole thing with like character details.
It's like in depth,
beats.
like so a copywriter clearly like got their hands on it or something. Yeah, so like just say for your next movie, make sure that you get a little bit more input on the Google description. It might get some views.
So I got some questions about the movie, but I just wanted to say, like, when we're doing podcasts about a movie, we always just like talk a little bit of our thoughts. And I just wanted to say, like, watching this movie, I really, really enjoyed it. And I just wanted to say thanks for like making such a cool like piece of media or cool like film, like piece of art that we could like enjoy and talk about it with you on the podcast. So I really appreciate you being on the show to like chat about it with us. But it's it's just like a fun like really earnest movie, like being like monster fans and just like growing up too. Like I know like as like a monster fan, like there's just like something that's like endlessly relatable, like universally about like, you know, this kind of a film where it's like utilizing your skills to defend the town and fight the monster kind of element. Like it's just it's a really fun story to follow for like longtime monster fans like us. But so I loved it. I really had a blast with it. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Did you want to share some thoughts, Khalid?
Yes, I loved it too. I'm always a sucker for stories like this. Longtime listeners of the podcast will know that Attack the Block is like a very near and dear to my heart, like sci-fi genre story. And yeah, just like that idea of like ragtag kids just like fighting an invader. And it's like, yeah, we're gonna protect our hood, our neighborhood. And I just, yeah, like that's oh, that always hits like the serotonin in my brain, the dopamine. I get that nice pleasure center scratch. So yeah, it was a hit for me too. It was the kids are so awesome. I really felt like invested in a lot of like what they were going through beyond the alien invasion, which is always like the tricky element of these like genre stories. Is like their real life day-to-day stuff has to be interesting too. It can't just be like aliens are attacking anybody. It's got to be like, why are we following them? And I think you did a good job of like reinforcing that in this.
Thanks. The kids honestly were just well, it was crazy to work with them, but so much fun. And we amazingly survived the summer without any major we had a weird health scare, but there's no major drama or fights happening, and these were kids that were 11 to 14, so it could have been horrific if there'd been fights or something on set, but it was such a supportive team, and we had been working together for a bit of time before. Well, I shouldn't say the actual final casting came together very quickly before we started filming. Nyla and Tatiana, two of the co-leads, were actually cast a week before we started filming. But the rest, Knowledge Us I'd known since she was a kid, and the rest I had been working with for a little bit, and Alexis and Chelsea had been around hanging around with Ryan, my co-writer, and I during the script writing phase.
Cool.
I Okay, wait. So I'd already kind of talked about Attack the Block being like a favorite of mine. I mean, I'm sure that comparison has come up for you, but the other one that comes to mind is The Thing. Just kind of like this idea of when we were talking when we discussed The Thing on our show a while back. The thing that I had mentioned was that it feels like this is happening to like the like best case scenario equipped people for the job, in terms of like if anybody's got to like deal with like a shape shifting monster, it might as well be like the gruffest dudes that like work out in this like Arctic like wasteland. And I feel like it still kind of applies. Like these are some
Yeah,
tough little kids, and
definitely.
if it's gotta attack a town full of kids, like at least it's like the ones that like they already are like ready for the occasional bear attack. You know what I mean? Like that's their day to day. So I'm just like, you know what? Let's see how they fare against an alien. So with that in mind, like did you have those films in mind when you were making this, or like what were the inspirations if not those films?
Yeah, Attack the Block was definitely a movie I loved, and I can't remember uh if it had come. I mean, yeah, I feel like I've been developing this movie for a really, really long time. Um, and certainly when Attack the Block came out, I was like just really, really uh I mean, I love that movie. It is so great that those kids are fantastic. And it's so scary, but then also so much fun. Um, and The Thing was definitely a movie that I have watched and influenced this script for sure. And the score was John Carpenter, was something we talked about when we were composing as well. And then the kind of the blood element and that sort of thing and was something that we kind of were talking through in the script phase for sure. And the kids, and it's true, these kids are tough, and they're tough, and then they are talking about polar bears, and then talking about cute boys. It's just really funny to kind of see this duality within them. Alexis, who plays Jessie, who has the bandana in the movie, she had gone out polar bear tracking a week before the movie premiered at South by Southwest, and she got crazy frostbite on her cheeks, and her cheeks were just these big red raw patches of skin. And I know Alexis, I thought for sure she was going to be so upset that at the premiere with the photos that she would have these things on her face. But it looked so cool when she told people that she was out polar bear hunting. It was just such a cool story that she was so proud to show off her frostbite. And that was, I think just like the spirit of the girls, and definitely when I was thinking about the movie and this kind of alien invasion, the girls, especially from a community like Peng, would be a tough foe to take on.
Yeah, I loved
yeah.
the dialogue too between them is so much fun. Like there's a lot of funny moments, but I loved like when I don't remember which one it was, but just describing the plot of The Thing to the other characters. That was Wes. That was really fun.
Yeah. The girls and I, we all, the night before, because almost everyone in the crew and cast lived in the high school and the grade school in town, because we didn't have there's not enough space in town to host all these new people coming in. And because there's actually not enough housing for the people that live there. And so if we were going to do this, we had to basically have to ask the principals to let us move in. And the day after we left town, school started. There were classes in the rooms we were sleeping in. It was,
wow.
We were so grateful to the teachers and the janitorial staff and everybody. But we had to ship up 60 beds and mattresses and turn a classroom. Everybody had a roommate. These amazing crew who are working 15-hour days are also then going and sleeping in a classroom with a roommate. All our meals are being served in the gym. But we just had these amazing people that we were working with. But the night before we started filming, the girls and I all put a bunch of mattresses together, and we ate way too much junk food and watched The Thing together until they all fell asleep, and I then went and slept somewhere else because there was no way I was going to be getting any sleep. And and that was one of our but it was one of our first but not our last lesson that too much sugar was a bad idea for filming with teenagers.
Makes sense.
Sounds like a lesson you learn a couple times.
Yeah need that a few times.
Oh my gosh, we on our first weekend, first day after they had their first weekend, I think, because they had been working, you work so hard and it's really exciting. And then they slept a lot on the weekends. And when they came back, it was like, talk about monsters, teenagers that are tired and like,
that's interesting about the school. I was thinking about the town, so Peng, where this movie takes place, and you shot there also. And watching the movie, one of the things that I really love in movies and shows in general is when the setting feels almost like a character in itself. And I think like getting the perspective on this town from the girls, like Micah wants to leave and Uki loves the town. And then just like, even just the way that you kind of shoot it as a director, like you really get to know like the space really well. And like when they talk about when they take the boat off to the lands, they say, right, I think, and like how that the geography of it all, it's like really interesting. And so I really love that element. Like you just really get a feel for that vibe of what it's like to live there. So you must have. It sounds like if you had the school involved, but like you had participation from like people living there. What was it like in general? Just like this was the first movie that was ever shot there, right?
Yeah, first movie ever shot there. There are not a lot of movies that have been shot in Nunavut, and um, what we did was we wanted to make sure that we knew that we would have to have the community on board with us doing this if we were to make it. So we went first to the town council and we kind of showed up and I kind of introduced myself and explained what I was doing. And oftentimes, like within Inuit communities, it means like, saying this is who I am, this is who my parents are and who my aunts are. And they just want to know, like, who are you in relation to us? And how do you know, like, what are you doing here, basically? And then I kind of explained what I was hoping to do and explained my relationship to the community and basically asked permission to make it here. And the town council had, they'd known that we'd written a proposal ahead of time and sent it. And so they kind of were expecting us and so they basically gave us permission to film and then we had to kind of go through the process of just kind of figuring out logistically, how do we get enough food up here? And because food is brought up on ships, but only later in the summer when the ice is kind of melted enough for ships to get in. And then otherwise it's brought up in the planes are half cargo, half passenger, and they bring in enough food for the town, and we'd be consuming more food than the town was kind of used to supplying. So we had to organize with the co-op to bring in extra food, and there was a lot of logistical things. And then we just wanted to make sure that the community was just a part of the making of it, and in order to have people, the people that would be driving us around to different locations, there weren't rental vehicles like you would normally have in a city. So we had to have drivers, which were just people in town with vehicles that could drive us around and then also be securing locations and locking roads down, and boat drivers and hunters with guns to protect us and different things like that, people cooking. The community really came to support us. And I remember Jonah, one of our head driver, he told me on our first day of shooting, he's like, the second the beluga come into town, I'm not gonna be here, I'll be out there. And I was like, oh, okay. And then sure enough, like halfway through the shoot, the beluga come and Jonah showed up and all the guys showed up, and he said that, today was the first day that my son went out on his own to get the beluga. And he was like, I wanted to be here instead. And it just made me it made me feel really great that, that he felt like he was a real part of the team, because he was, and that we were all making this thing together. And the girls appreciated just a lot of the cast were from Iqaluit, which is the capital of Nunavut, which is maybe 7,500 people, but they don't have an opportunity necessarily to spend a couple of months in these smaller communities of 1,500 people, and they were just getting to be wandering around in this amazing, beautiful place, and with kids that when we came back the next year to show the movie at the school, all the local kids had now gotten older and had snowmobile licenses, and my kids were all going off on adventures with their friends that they had made. And we feel like, when we go back to the community, that we have a real place there.
Well, that's awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, movies just act as like a time capsule, when it comes to like that whole town is going to forever be able to point to that, whether it's like the cast or the people that you were mentioning that just helped out. And like the fact that it was like a community affair, and at the end of it all, they have this like cool artifact that's always going to be there as like a testament to like everybody coming together. So that's awesome on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I
So
love that. I've never heard time capsule like in like movies described in that way, but I think that's a great way of describing it because I like to think that, just it's so cool, this idea that there's just that something can come from basically nothing. It's just an idea, and then this group of people come together and create something. And I feel like that's the thing more so than, whatever else happens after it. And so kind of thinking about it as this like capsule of, time and people's energy is
oh,
neat.
totally. And so I mentioned it earlier. I really love that, like, aside from the awesome genre element of it, like, being able to just like have this like story about butt kicking girls in this town that doesn't normally get stories like that. But then you still were able to like bring that humanity to it. A few elements that I picked up on were like the idea of growing up indigenous in a modern world, and how like Micah specifically reacts to it. I personally, as a child of the diaspora and like a immigrant to America, I really resonated with like that. Like, you can't even explain it, but like just like that embarrassment you have of your culture just by virtue of it being different from where you are and wanting to kind of
Yeah,
abandon it. And so I really love that. Did you draw from any like personal experiences with something like that, or
for
how did
sure.
Micah's story come to you?
Yeah, I definitely drew from my own experiences, and I feel like uh the movies for me are almost I feel it almost feels selfish in a way. It's like this way for me to process how I'm feeling about things. And so for this movie, it being a coming of age movie, it was a way for me to kind of explore how I was feeling as a teenager and some of the shame that I carried in my indigeneity. And I noticed when I was hanging out with the girls that they would sometimes say things like, oh, I don't want to wear that because that's so Inuk. And I'd be like, well, what do you mean by that? And they'd say, oh, well, that's so ghetto. And I'd be like, well, what do you mean by that? And they'd say like, oh, well, it's so poor. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So I was like, well, when we're talking about these things and we're saying that's so Inuk and you're meaning some other thing, it's like we I'm like, when we're looking around, I'm like, we're all proud to be indigenous, right? And or at least we're wanting to be working towards being proud indigenous women. And if that's something that we want for ourselves, then we have to be using prideful language. And that was just something that was very important for us to establish when in the way we were communicating together. And then when we were together and Micah's kind of reacting in certain ways, it was important for us to kind of talk through, what that meant and why she was saying those things. And yeah, so it was really great, but also it kind of emphasizes the how, these things it's emotional work that these actors are doing as well. Um, and certainly for, my next movie, it was kind of a way for me to process. I was just kind of struggling with the ethics of drawing from trauma for entertainment, um, trauma, either community trauma for to make movies, horror movies, and but then through this next movie, I was able to this script able to kind of process a lot of that. So I think that it's through these characters I'm able to kind of work through some things.
I like it. I mean, the girls are just so distinctly drawn. I'm reminded of just even the way you introduce them, where it's like Uki is like basically hustling one of the younger girls, Micah's sister. And so like you don't know what their relationship is or anything. And so like to by the end of that chase scene where like you think you have an idea of like, okay, so like maybe these are like the bullies, but how are they the bullies? They're chasing the person that robbed a kid. And then it turns out that they're all like actually friends. And it's like, oh, That's a really, really like novel way to introduce a friend group where like the dynamics like do not seem clear at all for a while, but you're so engaged.
Yeah, that was I mean, it was really fun to just this idea of this kind of opening bike chase through town, this thing that kind of feels familiar, but then also to me feels so familiar in other ways, this community that and place that I love. Um, and yeah, so then kind of doing that kind of fun opening sequence was yeah, it was a real blast. And although figuring out times to schedule with those kids and stuff, that was kind of crazy for that, but we got there in the end.
Want to talk a little bit about the monster element of it all, since that's kind of we tend to do creature
Yeah.
stuff on the podcast. But before I get into the monster specifically in the movie, one of the things that I was interested by is when you or in the movie when they mention a couple Inuk legends, like and I wrote it down from the subtitle, so I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but it was Ijurak, was it?
Iraq.
Iraq?
You're never gonna get it.
No, I'm
You're
not
never gonna get it.
I tried. I'm sorry.
No, you tried it. You did a great job. Iraq.
Thank you. Iraq.
Is-
Okay. I still don't think I
Yeah.
did it right.
Very close though.
But like I thought that was interesting, and like bringing up some of the ideas of like those like myths and legends and like the culture, and at first like kind of attributing something like that to what they're seeing, not really realizing it's aliens at first. Like, was the like your whole concept for the aliens like pulled from any of those legends, or were there any like other kind of like in a creatures or something that you might have thought of when you're putting these together?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of a mix of a few things. The Iraq are interesting because they are, it's when this kind of evil spirit invades a person that you know and you love, but takes over their body and makes them behave in strange ways. So that was something that we kind of were drawn to very early. And that's something that is a very common just spirit or creature or story that's told, and the girls would mention it all the time, like, and that that if that someone is in Iraq if their eyes, the rims of their eyes are red, or other people would have heard other stories or other ways of kind of detecting them. And so it was but then even just this storytelling kind of thing, all the kids know these stories, or they might have variations of the stories depending on where they're from. Chelsea had moved recently from Arviat, so she had slightly different kind of versions of stories. The Khalipiluit are also very common, these women who live underneath the ice, and they basically wait for cracks in the ice so that they can steal children. And they wear these mouties, these kind of coats with these big hoods that Inuit women wear to keep their babies in the back. But they keep their stolen babies in the back. And and so these are also just very common stories that just like any other culture as cautionary tales. It's just that the Arctic is so much more dangerous than most other places, and so our stories are really extreme.
I love it though. That's cool stuff though. The aliens that are in Slashback that we actually see, they're very tentacly, it seems like, and we see kind of their ship, we see them inside of like the people's skin suits, or like inside of like the animals and stuff. And I think we learn in the movie that they're attracted to, or they need blood, right, to kind of like, they're like, I think was it Uki who says they're hot for my blood. Was it
Yeah.
I like that, like that stuff. And then they also can sense their own blood, and so that's how they kind of like chase after the characters. But did you have any other like mythology that you'd kind of crafted for the creatures, like that doesn't show up in the movie?
Mostly just it was, kind of there was some figuring out of well, how exactly do they the mechanics of the tentacles, and
Mm.
they've got the tentacle kind of open, like flowers up, and then they've got this pincer that is able to kind of like slice and suck. And so, there was like these kinds of logistical things that we would spend so much time kind of like trying to figure out. And it's like, and actually, of course, those things are helpful for the VFX team at a certain point. But what was so much fun about that process is that it kind of starts in the script phase with myself and my co-writer Brian figuring some of this stuff out, and then I get to work with in every way. Movies are this collaborative sport, and as a director, I get to work with these amazingly talented artists and people that are just excellent at what they do. And so getting to go from the script and then also be working with our team to do practical effects and build these skin suits. So basically the aliens would take over these creatures, whether it's animals or humans, and fill their body with their tentacles. And so we also kind of wanted to figure out what they looked like inside of the bodies. We had these kind of drawings of how they might fill out a suit. And I got to work with this amazing concept artist to do some of that work. And then we brought that concept artwork to a practical effects team that started building these skin suits. And so we had to do the casting for that in order to start building the human skin suits. But we also then I got to work with this amazing contortionist, Troy, who can every joint in his body, is double jointed. And so he can just do the craziest things. And I came across him from he was on America's Got Talent or something. Someone sent me one of his videos, and so we built a suit that looked like a polar bear, but it was one that Troy had to wear he could only wear it upside down, like exorcist style. And so he's in this suit, and I had him running down this hill in this suit. And of course, I replaced it with a CG bear because it looked goofy. But it looked really, really creepy, but just also so kind of goofy. But it was great because we could use his movements that were so jerky and strange, and use those as reference for the CG bear. And Troy, of course, did a lot of the contortionist work for the human aliens. And then we also had another move. He was more of a dancer and a mover who Troy kind of taught some of the movements when we had two of the creatures on camera at once. And then if there were any stunts, this other person was performing as the stunts, like falling off of the roof house and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I instantly, when I was watching the movie, like looked up kind of Troy James, the contortionist, because I thought that was the movements were just so like unique and cool. Like when you're talking about the polar bear sequence early on in the film, like that was the way it just like stumbly walking towards the girls is just so like chilling and cool. Like, well done,
Yeah, thanks. It was so cool to work with him, and I'm in my next movie. I would love to work with Troy, and then, but also, contortionists that I think are so cool.
Yeah. I wouldn't doing this podcast, just learning about like creature effects and creature like actors. We learn a lot of contortionists go into creature work.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sequences, so like with the monster element of it, was like the part where they're fighting the skin suit creature. in Micah's house at the end, and they tear off the face, and and you see like all the tentacles within the face. Like
Yeah.
that was really cool. And I know that you mentioned kind of doing some CGI overlay on top of the polar bear suit, and I know there's CGI with the tentacles and stuff, but that was a really cool like blending of CGI and practical, because like the person in the suit there, but like having the tentacles like right inside of that face was like as a director, like again, we talked about you coming from documentary and like moving into genre, like there must have been a learning curve of like how to like work through that. I'm sure you had your team helping you with that, but that's a really cool effect to achieve.
Yeah, thanks. I thought that looked great too. Um, yeah, it was a learning curve for sure. But it's so funny. There were moments where that last scene, um, we just didn't have enough time to shoot that kind of fight scene with that creature and the head chop and all that stuff. And so we had to re-block it at 2 in the morning the night before and refigure out what we were going to be shooting. And we're like, oh, what if the knife goes like this and the blood splatter goes like that, and it just was like, it reminded me so much of being 15 with my friends in high school making our stupid movies, when being like, what if like the person's blood was like so there is like, at the same time as it's like, yeah, it was like this professional team, and we've got stunt coordinators and VFX people there, and so they've got the green screen mask underneath and we've got, I think we had two versions of the mask to rip, so we had to get it in these kind of two takes, and because we had the versions of the masks that were clean, and then we had two that had these kind of pre-made kind of tear marks in it. But so it was really kind of fun to be to have the support of these professionals as you're going through. But I do think that making horror and indie horror in particular, there is something very kind of DIY about the process. It feels, I mean, you do have lots of planning and stuff, but then it is like, at the end of the day, you're having someone like squirting blood with a pump off screen or something.
Yes. That's fun. Well, both of us mentioned, we both really, really love the movie. And for listeners, if you haven't checked this out, it's on Hulu is where I found it. Is there Khalid or Nyla, do you know if it's streaming anywhere else?
Hulu in the US, and I think the UK and some places, and then Crave in Canada.
Good. And I think or you could probably buy the Blu-ray or something, which physical media fans like me would do. Yeah. Yeah, there's places to find it. But yeah, so out of respect for your time, we'll probably start wrapping it up here. But should we do our final segment, Khalid?
Yeah, let's do it.
I think I sent this to you, Nyla, but if not, I will remind you, we do a final segment called What the Fandom, in which we just share like one or two things that we're kind of into at the moment that may or may not have anything to do with monsters, or even what we talked about at all. Just something that we're like watching, listening to, reading, that we're just like, this is cool. Thought we'd give it a shout on the podcast at the end here. So I'll let you go last, since sometimes I always bring that on our guest, which is, I always forget to bring that one up. But Khalid, how about you? What the fandom with you this week?
Hey, thanks for asking, Joe. My What the Fandom this week is going to be another podcast called Citations Needed. And just based off of their website, it is a podcast about the intersection of media, PR, and power. And it's hosted by Nima Shirazi and Adam Johnson. To get a little bit more into the weeds with it, it's basically just about like how media like chooses language and like what language they specifically use and why in certain instances. I think the big one is like how they use this different set of language. It's been called like the exonerative voice for like stories that involve police officers, for example, or military, where like it's not like a police officer shot someone, it's like a bullet hit somebody, and it's like, well, where'd the bullet come from? You wouldn't know from the headline. And it's just like, it's obviously like, just given what a lot of the news has been about lately, that's just a subject that I've become like really fascinated by. And yeah, I highly recommend it for anybody that is just like anything like me, going on like something like 20 years of like just kind of passively taking in the news and not really like interrogating like why they use some language for one group of people and a different type of language for others. So yeah, citations needed.
Cool.
Check it out. Highly recommend it. And Joe, what the fandom with you?
Thanks for asking, Khalid. That sounds really fascinating. I'm writing it down right now.
Mhm.
Citations needed.
Same.
Mine is a lot less like heavy. I've been into animation lately. So one of the I texted you about this, Khalid, but I've been watching this new animated show called Has Been Hotel, which is this like kind of goofy the way I described it, it's like weird macabre shit mixed with like big theater kid energy. And it's like it's about like the daughter of Lucifer in hell who starts a hotel to try to rehab souls to help them get into heaven because of how overcrowded hell is. And it's this there's weird stuff that like demon stuff, but it's also a musical, so there's that element to it. There's like 2 or 3 songs each episodes. Yeah, it's very silly, but it also at times like kind of gets into some heavy themes. So I've been just in general impressed with it. The animation reminds me like kind of a little bit of like Cartoon Network from several years back, like a Dexter's Laboratory kind of style almost, but it's very very TVMA, or like mature audiences only, I would say. Definitely not a kid show by any stretch, but super fun. I'm having fun with it. I think it's only 8 episodes. I found it on Prime. Keith David is in it, who we always love in anything. He's got a fun role, and is also, I've discovered in this show, as a great singer, so that's cool. Yeah, so check out Has Been Hotel. It's great. I will well, as with we do in all the What the Fandoms, I'll link it in the show notes. Nyla, how about you? What the fandom with you?
Yeah, I was a little bit late to start watching, but yesterday I caught the first 2 episodes of True Detective North Country, which
Ooh.
I've been really wanting to watch because, of course, I love the first. I actually didn't see this 3rd season, but I really liked the 1st and 2nd season. And then I had, I just know a bunch of people that are acting in the show because it's set up in the Arctic where I'm from. And so there are these amazing women who have contributed to the score, so some of the throat singing. And so it's just been really nice to hear some familiar voices.
That's awesome.
And it's fun and scary.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm very excited to start on that. I haven't seen season 3 either, but I've heard really good things about Night Country so far.
Same.
Yeah, and it's also just like really, it's weirdly comforting just to see Jodie Foster in a detective role again. Like I just,
Yeah.
it just feels like, oh yeah, like having Clarice back.
It's just natural. Yes.
I can understand that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you both for your awesome recommendations. Thank you, listeners at home, for listening to another episode of Frankenstein's podcast. Just a little bit of housekeeping at the end here. 1, if you haven't already, head on over to the Frankenstein's podcast Patreon and become a patron. We'd love to have you there, where we are dishing out Franken bits, as we like to call them. It's just fun little conversations that are tangential to what we talk about on the main. So like
Khalid,
a little less creature.
Let's give a
Sorry,
shout
what?
out to let's give a shout out to our new patron too, by the way.
Oh yeah, shout out to our newest patron, Andy G. He is going to be a guest of ours in a couple of weeks too, actually. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us over there, Andy. And for the rest of you, it's $3 a month, I believe, to be a patron, Joe. Am I right?
There's a $1 level for like a shout out, and to get the bonus stuff, it's the $3. Yeah.
Okay, so $1, $3. You got options is the takeaway here, guys. And then the last bit of housekeeping, I'm just gonna say RIP to a very awesome drama genre actor that Joe and I have been a fan of, at least since we've known each other, definitely since Joe was a little kid, at least. Carl Weathers passed away recently. He was Apollo. He was in Predator. He was in Arrested Development, which I like, was where I got to really fall in love with him. But yeah, it's like, we talk about people like Keith David and Kurt Russell and all these awesome actors that we grew up just like being like so inspired by. And if we don't get to just shout out our heroes when they unfortunately pass on, like, why are we hosting a podcast, Joe?
Right. No, agreed.
So
Great.
in peace. Yeah.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Carl Weathers, and great shout there. I appreciate that. Before we close out completely, Nyla, is there anything, any social media pages you wanted to shout out, or any places people can find you?
No. I mean, I've got an Instagram, Insta Nyla, but I almost never post there, and I am not on Twitter, and I have never downloaded TikTok.
All right,
You
fair
did
enough.
seem pretty well adjusted, actually. now that you mention it.
And you mentioned you're working on a new horror, an adult horror film coming out, which I won't ask you too much about it because I'm sure it's in the planning stages, but we will definitely be on the lookout for that. Do you have an ETA of when that might be coming out?
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to be done early next year.
Okay. Well, if you want to come back on and chat that movie, invitation is always open for you to come back on, or any movie you want to talk about, honestly. But you're always welcome to come back on.
Agreed.
Thanks so much, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody at home. Until next time, creep it easy.